Bart Furley stood up, his face reddening with a mix of triumph and indignation. Well, there it is. Ralph, prepare the paperwork. This unit will be vacant by the 1st of the month. But Ralph Furley didn't move. He stood up, his chest puffed out, his bruised plum leisure suit actually looking a bit dignified for the first time. No, Ralph said. Bart blinked. Excuse me? I said no, Bart. You aren't evicting anyone. This is my building. You might be the serpent of the board, but I'm the manager. And I'm telling you that Jack Tripper is the best tenant I've ever had. He's my friend. You're choosing these deviants over your own brother. Bart hissed. I'm choosing my family over a bully, Ralph said, his voice firm. Now, get out of my building, Bart, before I call the police and tell them about that little tax discrepancy you mentioned in the basement. Bart froze. He looked at Ralph. Then, at the three young people standing together, he realized he had lost. Without a word, he grabbed his briefcase and stormed out of the apartment, slamming the door behind him. The silence that followed was heavy. Then it was broken by a collective cheer. Ralph, you did it, Jack shouted, hoisting the landlord into the air. I did, didn't I? Ralph laughed, his ascot finally falling off. Wait, what tax discrepancy? I don't know, Jack admitted, setting him down. I just hoped you were bluffing. I was, Ralph winked, but don't tell Bart. As the night settled over Santa Monica, the three roommates and their landlord sat around the table, eating the remains of the roast chicken. There were no more disguises, no more Austin, no more eyeliner moles. Jack reached under the table and found Janet's hand. She squeezed back. So, Janet whispered. What now? Now, Jack said, looking at her with a warmth that could melt the Pacific fog. We live. For real. And as the disco lights of a nearby club reflected in the window, apartment 201 was no longer just a sanctuary. It was home. The end. The rendezvous. Prologue. The door at the top of the stairs. Santa Monica in the mid-70s was a city of gold and salt. The air smelled of jasmine and sea spray, and the nights were painted in the flickering neon of the Pacific Park Ferris wheel. At the heart of it all stood a modest stucco apartment building, weathered by the ocean breeze, but held together by the vibrant lives within. Come and knock on our door. The wind seemed to whisper through the palm fronds. We've been waiting for you. In apartment 201, the arrangement was unconventional, scandalous to some, but a sanctuary to the three souls who called it home. There were the kisses that were hers, the laughter that was hers, and the dreams that were his. Janet Wood, the sensible florist, with a heart like a rosebud, waiting to bloom. Cindy Snow, the clumsy, golden-hearted secretary who saw the world through a lens of pure innocence. And Jack Tripper, a chef in training with a quick wit and a soul that hungered for more than just culinary perfection. They were a triad of friendship, a lovable space that needed a face. But in the city of angels, even the most beautiful arrangements are subject to the storms of human emotion. Chapter 1. The Golden Hour at the Regal Beagle. The Regal Beagle was more than a pub. It was a sanctuary for the weary and a stage for the hopeful. On this particular Tuesday, the dim amber lighting caught the swirling smoke of a dozen conversations. Jack Tripper leaned against the mahogany bar, his eyes tracing the rim of his beer mug. Beside him, Larry Dallas, a man whose wardrobe consisted entirely of leisure suits and overconfidence, was scanning the room like a hawk looking for a field mouse. Hey, you know it's a real friendly place you got here, Larry remarked to the bartender, a man whose weary eyes suggested he had seen everything and forgiven none of it. Oh yeah, Jack chimed in, adjusting his collar. Larry wasn't listening. His gaze had locked onto a woman at the far end of the bar. She was a vision of 70s glamour. Blonde hair cascading down her neck in silken waves, wearing a peekaboo sweater that left just enough to the imagination to be dangerous. Jack, check out the little number parked at the bar, Larry whispered, his voice thick with a mix of awe and lust. The one with the body that won't quit? Jack followed Larry's gaze. He felt a jolt of appreciation purely aesthetic, he told himself. But his survival instinct honed by years of near misses, spiked. Yeah, Jack muttered. And she's also got a mean-looking boyfriend with a temper that won't quit. You should have seen what he did to the bartender 5 minutes ago. Don't do that, Larry warned. Do what? Look at my girl. She's not your girl, Larry. She's currently the property of that mountain of a man who looks like he eats tractor tires for breakfast. But Larry, ever the optimist, didn't listen. He moved toward her. Jack, bound by a misplaced sense of loyalty, followed. The mountain of a man was Max. He was built like a brick wall and possessed the social graces of a cornered badger. When Jack accidentally made eye contact, Max's face darkened to the color of an overripe plum. "You're doing it again," Max growled, his voice a low vibration that Jack felt in his molars. "Sir, excuse me," Jack said, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. "I don't have the slightest interest in your girlfriend. Truly. I'm just observing the architecture of the room." Max didn't care about architecture. He only cared about the blonde woman April and his perceived ownership of her. April, however, looked at Jack with a mix of pity and sudden interest. She saw the kindness in his eyes, a sharp contrast to the suffocating possessiveness of the man beside her. "I'm getting a little tired of both of you," Max barked. Jack grabbed Larry by the arm. "That's good. We were just leaving. Bye. Oh, by the way, do you happen to know where the little boy's room is?" Max pointed a finger that looked like a summer sausage toward the left. "Next to the little girl's room. Get out before I put you in one of them permanently." Chapter 2. The Shadow of Max. Back at apartment 201, the atmosphere was far from the usual light-hearted banter. Jack was pacing the living room, his hands trembling slightly as he recounted the encounter to Janet and Cindy. "He's a psycho, Janet," Jack insisted. "A literal, breathing, bicep-flexing psycho." Janet, ever the voice of reason, was trimming a bouquet of carnations. "You have a talent for attracting the wrong kind of attention." "I was just being friendly," Jack protested. "And then she showed up here." "Who?" Cindy asked, looking up from a pile of crumpled bank statements. "April," a voice called from the doorway. They all turned. April was standing there, looking ethereal and deeply troubled. She had followed the bartender's directions and Jack's trail of fear straight to their door. "I've come over to apologize for Max's behavior," she said softly. "I'm April." Jack felt a surge of adrenaline. "Jack, stop it," Janet warned. April walked into the room, her presence filling the small space with the scent of expensive perfume and impending doom. "I told Max what you said about controlling his temper. He hit the bartender." Jack went pale. "He hit the bartender? Because of me?" "Because of the way you looked at me," April said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "He's coming here, Jack. He plans on being at the Beagle every night until he catches you, and he knows you live around here." "Well, that doesn't scare me one bit," Jack lied, his voice cracking. "I've got enough beer in the fridge to last a month. I'll just—" Suddenly, a thunderous boom echoed through the hallway. It wasn't a knock. It was an assault. "Open up in there. It's Max." Chapter 3. The Great Escape. The apartment became a blur of motion. Janet pushed April toward the kitchen. Cindy tried to hide behind a floor lamp. Jack, paralyzed for a second, considered jumping off the balcony before realizing they were only on the second floor and Max would likely catch him in midair. "Quick! Hide!" Janet hissed. "Not you, Cindy!" Jack yelled as Cindy tried to climb into the linen closet. "April! Get in the kitchen!" Jack opened the door just as Max was about to kick it off its hinges. "Hey, Max. What's going on? How you doing? What's happening?" Jack's voice was an octave higher than usual. Max pushed past him, his eyes scanning the room like a thermal imager. "Where is she?" "You know who. April." "Max, listen," Jack said, trying to sound suave while his knees knocked together. Janet and Cindy nodded vigorously. "Yeah, what would Jack want with another girl?" Janet added. "Since he can't get anywhere with either one of us." Max wasn't buying it. He stormed toward the kitchen. "What's in there?" "In there? Oh, that's a kitchen. Your basic kitchen. Stove, refrigerator, table, cups, saucers. You know, the places where food happens. As Max searched the apartment, April managed to slip out the back through the service entrance, but the damage was done. Max turned to Jack, his face inches from his. I'm going to find you, Jackie. And when I do, I'm going to turn you into a what? A what? A memory. Chapter 4. The Desperate Measure.